Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to discuss a topic that has been making headlines and raising many questions, the situation between Israel and Yemen. Many people are wondering why these two countries, which are not direct neighbors and do not share borders, are suddenly part of the same conversation when it comes to regional conflicts and rising tensions. To understand what's really happening, we need to look at the background, the regional alliances, and the growing impact this situation may have not only in the Middle East, but also globally. The story of Israel and Yemen is not a simple one. On the surface, it may look like two distant countries with little in common, but in reality, the conflict is tied into a much larger picture of regional rivalries, proxy wars, and shifting power struggles. Yemen has been embroiled in a devastating civil war for nearly a decade, with the Houthi movement on one side and the Saudi-led coalition supporting the Yemeni government on the other. This war has created one of the world's worst humanitarian crises, but it has also turned Yemen into a battlefield for influence involving Iran, Saudi Arabia, the United States, and now increasingly Israel. Israel's involvement is not about territory with Yemen, but about strategic threats. The Houthis, supported by Iran, have repeatedly threatened Israel and claimed they have the capability to strike Israeli territory with drones and missiles. While many experts initially dismissed these threats as exaggerated, recent developments have shown that the Houthis are indeed capable of launching long-range attacks. They have targeted Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates in the past, and the concern is that they could extend their reach toward Israel. This places Yemen into Israel's wider security calculations. Another reason Yemen and Israel are linked is the Red Sea. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait, a narrow waterway connecting the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden, is a critical maritime route for global trade and energy supplies. Israel, like many other nations, relies on this passage for shipping routes, especially those connected to Asia and Africa. The Houthis have launched attacks on commercial ships passing through these waters, and this directly threatens Israel's economic and strategic interests. For this reason, Israel has been closely monitoring the situation and has cooperated with other regional and international players to secure this maritime route. Iran's role cannot be overlooked. Tehran has been the main backer of the Houthi movement in Yemen, providing them with weapons, training, and political support. Iran's larger strategy is to surround Israel with hostile groups, whether through Hezbollah in Lebanon, militias in Syria, or now the Houthis in Yemen. For Israel, this is part of the so-called Ring of Fire strategy, where Iran empowers different groups across the region to create constant pressure. The Houthis' involvement adds another dimension to this strategy, one that stretches far beyond Israel's immediate borders. On the other hand, Yemen's Houthis see themselves as part of a wider resistance movement against what they call Western and Israeli influence in the Middle East. Their slogans and propaganda frequently mention Israel as a target. Whether they have the full capability to follow through is debatable, but the rhetoric itself plays a role in the regional power game. The Houthis are not just fighting for Yemen, they are trying to position themselves as part of a larger anti-Israel and anti-Western axis. Recently, reports have emerged suggesting that Israel is sharing intelligence and cooperating more closely with the Saudi-led coalition to counter Houthi threats. While Israel and Saudi Arabia do not have official relations, they share a common enemy in Iran, and this has pushed them to cooperate discreetly. The situation in Yemen therefore becomes another example of how the conflicts of the Middle East are deeply interconnected. What happens in Sana'a or in the Red Sea has direct implications for Tel Aviv, Riyadh, and even Washington. It's also important to consider the United States' role. Washington has been supporting the Saudi coalition in Yemen for years, though with some criticism and pushback over the humanitarian consequences. At the same time, the U.S. has been a key ally of Israel, providing military support and working to contain Iranian influence. By tying these threads together, Yemen becomes another front in the broader US-Iran-Israel rivalry. And this makes the situation even more volatile. For ordinary people in Yemen, the war has been catastrophic. Millions are displaced, famine and disease are widespread, and infrastructure is destroyed. While geopolitical players like Israel, Iran, and Saudi Arabia think about strategy, ordinary Yemenis face starvation and suffering every day. This humanitarian disaster is often overshadowed by the bigger headlines of regional rivalry, but it remains at the core of the crisis. And when Houthis escalate threats toward Israel, it further complicates the already dire humanitarian and political landscape. For Israel, the fear is not only about direct attacks, but also about the precedent. If the Houthis successfully threaten or even strike Israel, it will embolden other groups aligned with Iran. It would show that Israel is vulnerable not just from its immediate neighbors, but from across the region. This is why Israel takes the threat seriously, even if Yemen lies far beyond its borders. The regional picture is shifting rapidly. The Abraham Accords brought Israel closer to several Arab states, and talks of normalization with Saudi Arabia have been gaining traction. Yet the situation in Yemen highlights the challenges of such alliances. Saudi Arabia's entanglement in Yemen has been costly and unpopular, and Israel's potential involvement only adds another layer of complexity. The conflict is not just about Yemen anymore, it's about the broader balance of power in the Middle East and how countries align themselves. Looking ahead, the Israel-Yemen angle is likely to remain tied to the broader Iran question. As long as Tehran continues to back the Houthis and use them as part of its strategy, Israel will see Yemen as a potential threat. This means that even though Israel and Yemen do not share borders, their fates are linked through the regional chessboard of alliances and enmities. Any escalation in Yemen could spill over into Israel's security concerns, and any Israeli moves could influence the war in Yemen. The danger is that this cycle creates endless instability. Yemen's people need peace and rebuilding, but instead their country is being pulled into regional and even global conflicts. Israel may not want a direct confrontation with Yemen, but the dynamics make it difficult to avoid being drawn in. The Houthis' threats, Iran's involvement, and the strategic importance of the Red Sea all combine to create a situation where Israel and Yemen are part of the same story, whether they want to be or not. So when we ask what's really happening between Israel and Yemen, the answer is that this is not a direct conflict in the traditional sense. It is a reflection of larger struggles in the Middle East, struggles that involve Iran, Saudi Arabia, the United States, and many others. It is about strategic waterways, missile capabilities, shifting alliances, and regional rivalries. For Israel, it is about preventing threats from emerging far from its borders. For Yemen, it is about a civil war that has been hijacked by larger powers and turned into a proxy battlefield. In the end, this situation shows us how deeply interconnected the Middle East is. No conflict exists in isolation, and even a country as devastated and distant as Yemen can play a role in Israel's security calculations. The question is not whether Israel and Yemen are at war, but how their fates are intertwined by the strategies of larger players. Understanding this helps explain why the two countries are suddenly part of the same conversation and why the world needs to pay attention.